Be sure to go to flipsidegaming.com and use promo code 6 for 10% off on orders over $10. Do the same with the Grizzly Gentleman, 10% off at checkout on your fantastic beard products. Or you could shop via the TCG Player affiliate link in the description down below to help support the show. And last but of course not least, you can go to Grey Viking Games with the affiliate link below to pillage some sweet arena codes. What is up, Planeswalkers? They're 6. Back with some more Magic the Gathering. Today is Death and Taxes Day. It's Saturday. However, I do not have a gameplay video for this. What I'm going to do with each new set that comes out is talk about some of the cards from that set that I think could make a splash in Historic Death and Taxes. And when I say could, I mean I literally chose every card that I think has some semblance of a chance in being played in the 75. So, without further ado, let's talk about Bound in Gold and where the reason I see this potentially fitting. So, Bound in Gold, 3-mana Enchantor. I'm not actually going to read the text. I did all of that in my spoiler video, but the reason I think that this has potential is because of the fact that it is similar to Faith's Fetters in that you can force Planeswalkers to not be able to use their activated abilities, because Planeswalkers don't have meta abilities. But it costs 1 less. Now, obviously, you're losing out on the ability to, words are hard, the ability to gain 4 life, which, for what it's worth, shouldn't matter. But it does allow you to just kind of hit anything. What's also important to note is that this can hit lands. They still get to use the mana abilities, but for example, let's say your opponent has Castle Ventress. You can, if your opponent doesn't have any Planeswalkers, or you have a board that's good enough to kill your opponent's Planeswalkers, and you just need them to not find any answers to your board, then Bound in Gold can help you in that manner. So in general, I do like the idea of Bound in Gold because it can hit kind of anything. The major issue blocking it is the fact that it does cost 3 mana. We also already have Skyclave Apparition. Now, obviously, Apparition can't deal with lands, nor can it deal with anything that is higher than 4 CMC. So, 5 mana Teferi, 5 mana. I mean, 5 mana plus Planeswalkers, period. But and just lands. So theoretically, there could be a meta where Bound in Gold is worth running, because at the very worst, you can still just force a creature that's large to not be able to do anything, right? At the very worst, it is bad pacifism, but it has a lot of nice usage cases. Divine Gambit. Now, I know I hate this card, and I know I talked about how much I hate this card on the preview videos. The fact remains that this can still exile an artifact, creature, or enchantment. There is potential, however slim, and I cannot stress enough how slim this potential is. There is potential that this could be a worthwhile card as the removal for Historic Death and Taxes. I am fairly certain it is infinitesimally small, because of the fact that they could get to put anything for free. It's a sorcery, so you don't get a lot of help there. It doesn't play nicely with Thalia, although for what it's worth, Thalia, at least as a presence, doesn't seem like she's needed as a 4 in the main deck. But yes, I will play with this card to test it out. I would be surprised if I end up liking it, but I'm still going to test it, right? Like, it's not so bad that I think it has literally 0 potential. I will give it a shot. 1 shot. Doomscar. Now, Doomscar is super weird in here. I've talked about Settle the Wreckage, Dusk Till Dawn, things like that, or Dusk to Dawn, I should say, for Death and Taxes decks. And because we are creature decks, generally speaking, we don't like those effects. However, depending, of course, on the extent to which you're able to make use of them, we do have a large number of options that are board wipe protection that we're fine with using. There's one of the new angels that we can get to, there's Mothra, and of course there's things like Nightmare Shepherd. So there are ways that we can get around it. The fact that this foretells, and then it only costs 3, can be quite nice. And the reason it can be quite nice is depending on the speed of the format, we may want to bring these in just for that potential of essentially, not having anything on turn 2, foretelling this, and then on turn 3, wiping our opponent's aggressive board, and then starting to play some of our creatures. I don't think that's very likely. I do think this is more of a normal control card, but it is something that I think has some potential if the metagame is very strange. So Glorious Protector, this is the card that I was talking about earlier, about having some innate protection that's fine. When I was mentioning this card for the preview videos, I mentioned the fact that this compares to Restoration Angel, although it is obviously very different. I think I didn't point out the potential that the Foretell gives you, because holding up 4 mana is very different than holding up 3 mana. So because we currently use Ailsid of Life's Bounty, or in some number at least, and we are running quite often 23 lands, because very often our curve is not that large. It doesn't go that high. It means that a lot of the times we're going to kind of max out at 4 mana. And that's fine. That's generally what we want. We want to consistently get to 4, and then we're fine kind of maxing out at around 4. 5 is fine. But if you want to keep holding up Ailsid, but you still want to use Glorious Protector, having that ability to foretell it is quite nice. I'm trying to think of any, and I don't think there are other angels that we really want to play, so that aspect of the card is probably fine. And yeah, just in general, Glorious Protector is it's a flash blocker against mono blue, or flash decks more generally. And it can protect a single creature, right? We can theoretically, if our opponent is trying to kill Archon of Emeria, we can flash this in to protect Archon. The issue being, of course, that we won't have our Archon back while we have Glorious Protector out. But we at least have some nice situations where our opponent, if they want to remove a 3-power flyer, which is not nothing, then we'll have to get that annoying card back. So there's definitely some interesting things here, and I'm probably going to end up with this being the main 4-drop in all but the green deck, and that's just because the green deck is pretty heavy into Collected Company, and I'm not sure how exactly I'm going to modify that deck with the coming set. Halvar, God of Battle, and Sword of the Realms. Now, Halvar, in general, not that great. We're for the most part, we're not running any equipment or enchantments. But there are some good equipment in Historic, namely Maul of the Skyclaves and Shadow Spear. Right, those 2 equipment are good. They're very good. So in a deck like that, essentially a Death and Taxes, probably mono white, Death and Taxes list that happens to run both of those equipment in some number, Halvar would likely be pretty decent. Giving our creatures double strike means that we'll be able to pound for pound deal more damage with our creatures, especially if it has trample from Shadow Spear or flying from Maul. In addition, this helps us with one of the main issues with those equipment. Obviously, Skyclave enters and attaches itself to something, but after that creature dies, Skyclave costs 4 to equip. Now, Shadow Spear doesn't cost a ton to equip, it's only 2. But paying 2 mana to equip a Shadow Spear means that we're not paying 2 mana to, for example, put another creature onto the board. With the second ability of this, it does help you. Kind of. Unfortunately, you can't equip something that's not equipped currently, which I was kind of hoping that this was just like a misprint, mistyping, and that it was Wizards was going to be like, oh yeah, this is meant to do it like this, but no. But what it does mean is that if you have your Skyclave or something on a creature that you don't want it on, you can move it. So let's say, for example, we turn 1 play an Ailsid, and turn 2 we do something, who cares. Turn 3 we play Skyclave onto the Ailsid. We attack with it, sure, cool, whatever. But we realize at some point we're probably going to want to sack that Ailsid. We play out Halvar, we can move the equipment to someone else. So, and that's kind of the main place I see running this. And because of the fact that it's a flip, it means that we can have Sword of the Realms. And for what it's worth, I think I was pretty low on Sword of the Realms initially. But the fact that you are going to, whenever a creature dies, it's understand, yeah. The fact that you can, this is even more, just like kind of redundant extra board wipe or removal resistance, right? Slap this onto a Thalia. And I think that's the main thing that I didn't like really consider, is slapping this onto a Thalia, being a 4-power vigilant first striker, means that we can really keep getting in there on attacks. And then on defense, we still have 4 power of first strike. I cannot express enough how much, how good first strike is when those numbers start to creep up near 3, 4, and 5. But yeah, the fact that you can just keep getting your creatures back is quite nice, and it is a relatively cheap cost, 2 and 2. So yeah, I'm going to try out a Death and Taxes equipment deck. We'll see how that goes. Redane, God of the Worthy, and Valkmira, Protector Shield. I love both sides of this card, right? They both do good things. The issue is, and will always be, we have so little room in the 3-drop slot. So little. As Flying and Vigilance, cool. The Snowlands part, probably not going to matter all that much. I don't think there's enough good snow stuff to really have like dedicated snow decks. I paused there because I was trying to think. I don't think there will be, but I don't know. But the fact that this forces board wipes as well as the 4-mana draw spells, your planeswalkers, hell, even gosh, what is that? What is that card? Ironcrag Feet. You have Forgotten, whatever, the artifact. All of those things will be pushed further. And that's what Death and Taxes wants to do. It wants to push what your opponent can do further out, just beyond the point where we get to kill them. So that's quite reasonable. And of course, like, this I still am not entirely sure of, right? Like, it helps against, like, our things being dealt damage. So, like, I would want the creature, typically, even against other, like, aggressive decks or whatever, because at least it gives me a body, but, like, Valkmira makes our creatures survive a little easier. And then, of course, it makes it so our opponents have to pay more to do things. So, I'm not sure as much, but even the thing, right, is at the worst, this is a 3-mana 2/3 flyer. It probably replaces Kinjali Sunwing in general. Obviously, if we still have to deal with a lot of haste creatures, then we can deal with that. But the utility is quite nice. Oops, this is supposed to be with the red. Supposed to be with the red. You see nothing? Sure, that's with red. Anyway, another card I was very angry about. Yeah, the fact that you have to exile a different creature, and then it only affects creatures that share a type. We're not playing a tribal deck. How is this $12 and $18? How? I don't know. Maybe this will be fine in Standard or something. Standard Warriors, maybe? I don't know. This card seems like garbage to me. Yeah, I do not think it's worth a slot. If we played, like, Thalia's a human soldier. We have Archons. We have Spirit Clerics, I think, is Skyclave Shade. Like, there's just no real organization to our creature teams. It's very random, essentially. If there is a more tribal-centric Death and Taxes list, which probably would end up being humans if I had to guess, then maybe this can see play. I legitimately believe that Doomscar is more likely for me to enjoy playing than Resplendent Angel. Righteous Valkyrie, I kind of had to talk about because there is some potential with kind of a Death and Taxes life gain deck. I have seen normal life gain decks play Thalia because, generally speaking, they play very few non-creatures, mostly just, depending on the build, a Johnny and the Griffin Airy or something like that. So there's some potential to have a bit of overlap in terms of a life gain style deck and a Death and Taxes style deck. That said, I have not explored that fully, but I did want to mention that it is a possibility. Search for Glory is interesting. Search for Glory is very interesting. So the fact that it can grab legends, and I've already talked about a number of legends that I might want to utilize, is very good. It also allows you to get sagas, and there are a couple of sagas that I talk about that I'll talk about. The main concern, of course, is the fact that it's pretty slow. 3 mana, and then the saga is going to cost you whatever. I don't think that this is going to be good enough in historic Death and Taxes. I think the big reason I wanted to mention this card is because we might now have enough cards for a good historic Brawl Death and Taxes, and that's technically not like the purview of the usual Saturday Death and Taxes videos, but I did want to mention that we're probably at that point where you can actually make a full-on mono-white Death and Taxes historic Brawl deck, and it would be good, and Search for Glory would help you there. Sigrid, God Favored. I don't know how you're God Favored with protection from gods, but whatever. It has Flash, which is nice. One of the things that Death and Taxes decks have missed is the ability to play things at instant speed, essentially thanks to typically Aether Vial, but you also had things like Restoration Angel. This one, another Flash card. It is Legend without the ability to flip, so that does mean that we're not going to love these in multiples. It is a human, so it kind of goes with the Resplendent Angel, but whatever. First Strike is also nice. Like, the difference between having a single First Strike creature and having multiple, it can't be understated. It's just like having a single First Strike creature that has a high power. It allows you to double block things, and typically do well at killing them. The issue, of course, is that our creatures are relatively small. But when she enters, you get to exile a thing until she leaves. The fact that, like, she competes with Skyclave Apparition, and she competes very poorly. Like, incredibly poorly. It can only hit a creature, and only if it's attacking and blocking. So, I don't see it, but I'm gonna try it. Starnheim Unleashed. Starnheim Unleashed is a bit of a weird one here, and the reason it's a bit of a weird one is because of the fact that for 4 mana, like you're typically not going to want to just play this, especially considering we're going to be running Thalias potentially, yada yada yada. But what I like about this card is the potential it has at bringing you back into a game, right? If your game plan is essentially just against a more aggressive deck or whatever, is just to block things and not die, eventually you're going to run out of creatures. And against the aggressive deck, you need to make sure that you, at some point, can match their creatures. And now 4/4s don't match everything. They're still a pretty decent benchmark. So weaving the foretell cost in there is possibly going to be pretty easy. If we're flooding out against control, it's another thing where we can just kind of say, okay, I'm gonna on turn 4 even, I'm gonna play a Thalia and play this foretell this. And then later on, after our opponent has board wiped us and stuff, we can go ahead and put a bunch of mana into this. We've been flooding. I don't think it's worth running, generally speaking. But I'm gonna try it. Ascended Spirit is really interesting. It would need to be in Azorius, obviously. We would also need to have snow. And I do not think there are any other things that I was talking about in this video that require snow. So I'm not sure if this is worth using at all. Death and Taxes has been called a tempo deck, and I can see where people are coming. And Ascendant Spirit is a tempo card. I've actually seen a decent number of people not think highly of this card, but this is kind of what like blue tempo wants to do, right? Like if they haven't countered anything, it's like, all right, I'll dump mana into this. There are other flash cards, obviously, but this is just another mana sink. That said, with Death and Taxes, a 1-mana 1/1, not that great. A 1-mana or 3-mana 2/3, not that great. A 6-mana 4/4, not great with flying, but it's not all at one time cost. And of course, once you can get to the point where you can use its last ability a lot, it gets a little bit better. It's likely too slow, and it doesn't really want to do what Azorius wants to do. So for now, I'm a little eh. Wait, this is a blue card. Yeah, I think if Azorius Death and Taxes wants an additional removal spell, I think this is fine. Obviously, it's not the best because of the fact that it costs 3 mana and is not a creature. And you wouldn't play this over Skyclave Shade or Skyclave Apparition. I think that because this has Foretell, it won't be terribly hard to sneak this in, at various intervals. Giving them a single 1/1 blue bird is not an issue at all. That is essentially not a downside. Oops. Downside? Not a downside. A 1/1 blue bird creature token is functionally nothing against a deck that has a ton of 2/3s that fly. You get to exile the artifact or creature. That is helpful against an array of decks. An absolute array. And of course, it is Foretell. You can foretell it for a single blue. If it ends up seeing play in the Azorius deck, it's likely a sideboard option. But hey, it's better removal than wedge removal. Then we get on to black. Eradicator Valkyrie is really hard-pressed to find a slot in the Orzhov version, mainly because you have access to Nightmare Shepherd. And Nightmare Shepherd is great at keeping your tax effects around. That said, working alongside of the throwaway ability of those cards, being able to force a sacrifice, especially if you're up against a control opponent, where you can attack one of their planeswalkers with Eradicator Valkyrie, and then the other planeswalker you essentially end up getting killed. And because of the way both works, you can wait until after damage. You can wait until the end of your turn if you want. Yeah, so it's interesting. It has Hexproof from Planeswalker, so she can't get bounced by Teferi or anything like that, and that is helpful. The thing is, she still dies from just like Liliana -2, Chandra -3, not the second one that's -X, but X equals 3. That's the second one that's -3. Did I say the second? Who cares? Rise of the Dreadmard. Typically with the black version, the idea is we make our creatures able to come back. This is an alternate usage there, where we can kind of just have this as some extra hate against an opposing board wipe. It's frankly probably not that great. They do come in untapped, which is interesting, but overall, it's probably not worth it. But I did have to mention it. Valkyrie God Obliged. You might be very confused as to why this card's here. I think that Valkyrie will actually be very good in the Black Death and Taxes deck. You maybe even play a light red splash in terms of the mana base, so you can sometimes play Thibault if you have gotten very far in mana. The reason this is potentially very strong is because of its effect on Uro. You not only steal a creature from their hand, but being able to just turn this into Uro and start getting those draws and things, I think is absolutely fantastic. Sure, you have the access to Thibault, almost never going to matter, right? Almost never going to matter. The fact that you can kind of just have it's 2-mana thing, you get to just take one of their best creatures. It's good stuff. I mean, like, even if you just take an Ulamog, right? Or you just take gosh, what is that? What is that card? Torrential Gearhulk, right? Even if you essentially have no plan on having Valkyrie become one of those, you're still getting that exile. Now, for what it's worth, when Valkyrie leaves, they get that thing back to their hands, but you still are getting, you're getting hand information, you are taking it from them for a while. It's helpful. Quakebringer, in the red version, I have played Tectonic Giant, and that is a giant, and this is also a giant. What's nice here is that it says your opponents can't gain life, so we already have the Rampaging Ferocidon, which has it so that no one can gain life. Sometimes that can hurt us, but obviously this one is a little different. And then we have, very similar to Tectonic Giant, just some nice ways of just hurting our opponent. Just every turn, just ping them, just hit them. I don't think there are many other giants that we would want to play. Oh wait, I forgot. We also play Bone Crusher Giant in the Boros version, so it's very possible that this card is just absolutely fine. It's a bit weird that we'd be playing like that style, but hey, like all of those cards are good, right? Bone Crusher Giant is a creature that can be removable and hurt your opponent when they try to get rid of it. Tectonic Giant attacks and either is card advantage or domes your opponent, especially if they try to get rid of it. And then of course, Quakebringer just domes your opponent. And what's lovely about Quakebringer is if it's in the graveyard, we just do a thing. It's fine. I forgot about Bone Crusher Giant. I'm higher on this card than when I initially put it in here. Thibault's Trickery. It's a counterspell. That's it. This is a counterspell. I'm going to try this out in Boros Death and Taxes. It might be great. You just counter a thing. If your opponent, like the thing, right, is if your opponent is trying to do some dumb stuff, you just counter a thing, and they can't do this. They can't get the same thing. Now, obviously, like there is potential that this is going to go poorly, right? You counter someone's Forsaken Monument, and they go and they get a do they cast that? Yeah, they do. They can cast it. But yeah, like they can cast it in a log or something, right? Like that's a bad situation. But you could also counter an Ugin, and then they get a freaking Mind Stone, right? They're running that stuff as well. You can counter a Planeswalker. They go until they hit a counter spell or something like that. That's not great for them in that situation. So yeah, I think this card has a lot of potential in a Boros Taxes deck. Battle Mammoth. I'm going to be honest with you. I just really like this card. And you get to draw cards if your opponent targets your things. It's not good. Kaldheim, though. Kaldheim. We already have a decent number of legendary creatures. With the new set coming out, we're possibly going to have even more. Issue, obviously, is this is a 4-mana card. Cockatrice. Collected Company doesn't mesh as well with this card. But a 4-mana that has the potential to be a 6/6 is pretty nice. Issue, of course, is that you need 3 other legendary creatures. 2 other legendary creatures. So, like, you need to have, like, Thalia into maybe Redane or something. It's terrible. Like, turn 1, Sack Dog, Selfless, whatever. Savior, Selfless Savior. Then Thalia, then Redane, then this. Like, that's pretty decent. Also, you get to just get more creatures potentially. You look at the top 6, like that's not bad. And the fact that she has Vigilance, if you get her to that point, is quite good. That's not even all though. You can do one of these things, and like Mana Ramp. You probably wouldn't. Like, I'm not gonna lie. You can only do a creature spell of the chosen type or a legendary creature spell. But in general, like you have the option of doing that if you really need to. So. Ascent of the Worthy. This one is very strange, and I'm still not entirely sure how I feel about it, but I think the idea in Orzhov Death and Taxes list is you essentially bring this in against decks that are attacking you a lot, and you just choose a creature that either doesn't care about dying or for some reason can't, and then you do that again. You do that twice, and then you get a creature back, and like maybe you even have Nightmare Shepherd out. The first time the creature dies, you get a 1/1 token copy of it. You know, it has potential. I'm not going to say it's high hopes though. Battle for Bredegard. My thinking for this is I do wonder if you can have some sort of very strange version that runs relatively few tax effects, but also tries to go a little wider. Like with Collect the Company, you obviously go slightly wide, but I do wonder, like, I have absolutely played Tristani in the green-white version before. Maybe you can have a version that is a little bit more tokeny and use this. I don't know. I'm not sure I like Tristani right now in the metagame, but Paul the Imposter, essentially this is just this is removal. It's bad removal, but it's removal. It exiles. That's kind of like the thing, right? Like it can technically exile an Ulamog. The 2 turns of essentially garbage. This woman. This one's kind of interesting because we're not often going to be casting 2 spells a turn, but I could definitely see a situation where we might be able to, especially if we get her going, right? The fact that she puts some cards back in your hand, we have relatively cheap creatures for the most part, and just, you know, double cast or whatever. So she has potential, although frankly not a ton. British Retribution though seems great, especially if we do end up running more angels, right? We already have kind of a couple angels that we are considering running. Oh wait, Redane, she's not an angel. Redane's not an angel, dude. She's a god. I mean, still, there are technically more angels, but like 4 mana for essentially a Sarah angel, it's not terrible, but it's actually like when you compare it to Questing Beast, not great. But the fact that you can just yeet a creature, like you don't even have, they don't fight, you just get to murk a creature that is power less than your angel is quite good. And then you can give your angels double strike and just dome your opponent. So I out of the saga so far, I definitely like this one the most. For the True Shore, you create some treasure. The idea essentially is if I did say mono white previously, but maybe you create a treasure token, create a treasure. Put in your hand. But maybe you have a red-white equipment version of the deck that runs this because you can go get Halvar. I'm not sure. The entire reason is because the entire reason I selected this is because of the fact that it worked with Halvar. Kai the Inexorable. If you're going like weird with it, it's removal. For what it's worth, like you also do have a pretty good +1. And once again, because we have a decent number of legendary creatures, her ultimate is also fine. The main issue you're gonna have is Death and Taxes deck is still something that needs to beat your opponent down, and you're not always gonna have you're not always gonna want to be doing this on turn 5 essentially. Maya, Bredegar Protector, she's essentially the same as Tristani, right? That's just what I'm thinking in my head. Like, if I want to go into more of a potential tokeny strategy, Maya and Tristani both work really nicely with Militia Bugler, right? There are reasons to do that. It's just whether or not I like that style of build now that we have Collected Company. And for right now, I'm not convinced, but I will give them a try. Nico Eris is a little different. I think I was pretty low on Nico Eris when I first saw the card, but being able to just have a planeswalker that sits around can give you cards that draw you cards and can deal damage is helpful. Is it good enough? I don't know. I really don't. But I'm gonna try it. Raven's Warning. This makes a flyer. We have a lot of flyers, and we can like draw a card. And then, of course, we can get something out of our sideboard in game 1. Maybe there's a weird, more flyy version of Death and Taxes in Azorius. The main issue is that Azorius actually really likes its 2-drops. It really likes Lavinia and the other one, whose name I've absolutely forgotten. Shadow of the Scalds. You essentially, what's nice about this one is you do get some card advantage here. You get to exile the top 4, and you can play those. And then for the next two turns, it's just when you cast a spell, you can make your creatures bigger. And I've already talked about the fact that making Thalia, for example, larger is quite nice. Obviously, this doesn't work great with Thalia because of the fact that it's a 4-mana non-creature, but I think that it still has some potential because it does buff up your board and give you card advantage, which is exactly what Death and Taxes kind of wants to have. And then last is Weathered Runestone. I'm going to play it alongside Grafdigger's Cage, but I unless I'm missing something, this is just a better Grafdigger's Cage. Like, unless I'm missing something, this is just a better Grafdigger's Cage. Yes, it costs 1 more. So, typically I don't care about things. I mean, sure, I can understand why costing 1 more is bad, but it does more. So, I don't know. Anyway, yeah, that's the video. Send me things to my P.O. box so I can open them on camera. It'll be very funny. And, of course, I would like to thank my lovely patrons, especially Fogwin, Malik, and Balater for the unchanged support. If you'd like to join them and support the show, you find links in the description down below. Do, of course, hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, like, comment, subscribe. And, of course, until next time, all be one.